everyone, welcome to our video tutorial for this cat cape that you can see Melba wearing here. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like, share and subscribe, and we hope to catch you soon. Thanks, bye. Okay, so to make this cape, you'll need some yarn. I've got this one here, which is a 75% acrylic, 25% wool yarn. You can see that it's got these thicker areas in it and then these thinner areas. This pattern is kind of great because you can use any yarn you like. It adapts to any yarn you like. You can make it a more of a winter type project, or you could, make something sort of light for a summery project. But yeah, super adaptable to any type of yarn that you want to use. And then you'll just tailor your crochet hook to the yarn that you've chosen. So I'm using a 5mm for this one. You'll need a darning needle to weave in your end. You'll need some scissors to snip your end. You may or may not want some stitch markers. Now, I don't really use them for this project, but especially if you're a beginner, and this is certainly a beginner-friendly project, you might want some stitch markers. They just, make life just a little bit easier, but you don't really need them. It's entirely up to you. You might want a tape measure. If your cat's not with you, you might want to take some measurements. What I tend to do with this pattern is I just work it up using Melba while she's here. But you could certainly take some measurements to work out a few of the dimensions, and I'll talk about that as we move through the project. Just before we get started on the crochet part of the tutorial, I just want to run through the techniques that you'll need to know to make this cape. Just a reminder that for the most part I don't actually slowly go through the stitches, so if you're not sure about any of the stitches, then please brush up on a tutorial on YouTube, or use any other resource that you have. But you'll need to know beginner-friendly techniques that include slip knot onto your hook, how to create a chain, how to half double crochet. Now this is US terminology, and I apologize that the camera is shaking because Melba is on my table. You will need to know how to single crochet, so half double crochet in the back loop only, single crochet. You'll need to know how to slip stitch, and then how to do an invisible finishing stitch. Now that is one technique that I will run through with you. It just means that you can't see where your project is finished off. So I'm gonna run through that with you. You can just choose to finish off in the normal, yarn over pull through, but I'm gonna show you this finishing stitch that just helps to disguise the beginning and the end of your project. The other thing you'll need to know is how to weave in your end. Just a little bit of basic stitching technique, weaving technique really, and super simple. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so to get started, slip knot onto your hook. There's lots of different ways to make a slip knot, so if you need to check out a tutorial, then please do. Now from here, let me just go back to my one that I've made already. So we're going to be working down the length. Okay, so our initial chain, our foundation chain, is going to be this length here. So just to orientate you with the cape, so here is the neckline. This is the ties that tie up under just at the chest. Here is, so your cat's front legs sit here. These ties sit just behind the front legs, so around the ribs, and then there's your length. So it's up to you how long you make this, entirely up to you. So this is about a 3/4 length. You could make a half length, or you could make a full length, okay, or anything in between. So what you'll do is you'll measure from your cat's neck down to where you want it to fall, okay. Now, with that measurement, you'll need to add a little bit extra, because what happens with this neck piece is it will fold over like this. So it sits nice and comfortably behind your cat's neck. Okay, so you'll need to take that measurement and add just a little bit extra. So when you're making your chain, so just to explain to you about your chain, like I said, your foundation chain will be this length here. You'll need to allow that little bit extra for the neck rollover, but we do go around the edge with this single crochet border. So that will accommodate a little bit of extra length. Okay, so it doesn't have to be exact. Take the measurement that you want, so from neck to where you want it to fall. I would advise you to add about 1 centimetre or 2, okay, to that length. Just when you're making your chain, try not to make your chain too tight, okay? So just start chaining. You can chain any number. It doesn't, you don't need a specific number or a multiple. You'll just make a chain up to that length. So like I said, take the measurement. I would add, let's say 1, maybe maximum 2 centimeters to that measurement. And what you can do is you can make your chain and you can check that it's falling approximately where you want it to fall on your cat. Okay, so keep on chaining. So I'm going to chain a similar amount. Now that cape that I've made is about 30 centimeters long. So I'm going to chain up to about, to make a similar sort of size, I'm going to chain to about, let's say 28, 29 centimeters. It's going to be fine for me. And what I will tend to do, so I'm sure I've got plenty there now. So at this point I will check it on Melba and make sure it's sitting approximately where I want it to sit. Okay. And then we're going to move on to row 2. Let me just double check. I'm just going to use this measurement here. Yeah, it's about where I want it to be. Okay, so then we're going to move on to, row 1. So you've got your chain, we're going to move on to row 1. So here's where we're going to start our half double crochets. Now, one of the techniques that actually I didn't mention at the beginning, but you can choose to do this or not, is we're going to work into, so when you've got your chain, we've got these V's at the front, and then when you flip it over, you've got this little back loop here, or third loop I call it. Okay, so I'm going to be working into that third loop for my first row. So yarn over, skip the chain closest to the hook, under there, and then work into the next chain, into that loop at the back. Now it's a little bit more fiddly to work into that third loop, but what you'll find is it will give you a more symmetrical finish. So you could, if you wanted to, if you can't, you can't be bothered working into that back loop, you could just work into the front of the chain like we do on other projects. You could just work in here. But what's going to happen if you do that, when we come to add our single crochet border, if you've worked into that back loop, both sides will look approximately the same. Okay, so that's again a design decision that is up to you to make. I'm going to recommend that you work into this back loop, this third loop, and then you'll just continue along. So half double crochet, yarning over, inserting your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, all 3 for a US terminology half double crochet. So continue along and work those half double crochets until you get to the end of row 1, and then I'm going to come back and we'll work through row 2 together, and then from then on I'm going to let you just go for it until we come back to this center point here where you have the option to add this little hole. Okay, so finish off your row 1 and I'll see you back at the end of my row 1, and then we'll work on to row 2 together. Okay, so I'm just placing my last half double crochet in that row 1. So just make sure you get that last chain in that row. Okay, so here again is where I recommend that you just line up what you have now against your cat. Just remember that you've got enough length to do that little fold over at the neck, and then for it to sit where you want it to sit. Also bearing in mind that you will just have that little bit extra on each end to accommodate the single crochet border. Okay, so work out all of those things and make sure at this point, before moving on, that you've got the length that you want. Okay, now we're going to move on to row 2, and every row from here on out will be the same as this row until you get to this center point. So this is the cape folded in half. So this is the center point down the back. And then from there you'll decide whether you want to add this little hole if your cat goes out on leash to, accommodate the leash. Entirely optional. So from here on out, all the rows are the same. So chain 1, turn, and then we're going to, in this first stitch, half double crochet into both loops. And here, to create the ridge effect, we're going to start working into the back loop only. So in your V of the stitches, you've got a front loop closest to you, a back loop furthest away from you. So we're just going to work into that back loop only until the last stitch, and then we're going to work into both loops again. So the first and the last stitches are working through both loops. Every stitch in between will be in the back loop only to create that ribbed effect. Just adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of extra interest. So you can see here, just gives this ribbed effect. So continue on, so keep going. Now each row, like I said, will be this same row. So we're just making a big rectangle basically, and this is why it's such an easy pattern. If you want something warm for your cat but you don't want to, or you're not feeling confident about sizing a sweater, which can be a lot more difficult to size than something like this, then it's a really great simple project. So keep going. Now you may also at this point want to take a measurement. So this is the edge of the back. So you might want to measure where you want it to fall. Okay, so you don't want it to fall too low and not too high either, especially if you're using it as something that's a warm layer. You don't want it to be too short at this point. You don't want it, you want it to give a nice coverage, but you don't want it to be too long so it bothers your cat's movement. Okay, so you might want to take that measurement as well, so the half measurement from the top of the back here down to where you want it to fall. So these are the legs here, okay? And then you'll do half, and then you'll do the other half, stopping in the middle here for this hole if you want to. So keep on going, keep working your rows backwards and forwards until you get to that halfway point. I'll come back to you when I'm adding this hole here, okay, because Melba is often going out on leash, so I like to have that option to add the leash through there if I want to. So keep on going, and just a reminder that the first and the last stitches are working through both loops, and then all the stitches in between are into the back loop only. Okay, so those stitches working into the 2 loops at each end will just give you a little bit more structure to the sides there. So keep on going, and I'll meet you once I'm in the middle of my project. Okay, I'm just at the end of my row 2 here. I just wanted to come back quickly just to make sure that you get this last bit right, especially on the second row. So this is going to be my second to last stitch here. And then make sure you work into, so it can be sometimes a little bit tricky to see, and sometimes you just have to turn your work slightly. Make sure you get that last stitch, okay, and working through both loops. So just make sure you don't forget about that last stitch on the end there. Okay, I'll leave you to it. Okay, so I've finished to halfway of my cape. Now, just to give you an idea where I'm at about 12 centimeters here, just a bit under 11, let's say 11 centimeters. So that, just a reminder, this is from the back here down to where it sits along the body, okay, this part here. And from here, there will be the ties from this edge here. Okay, so at this point, you need to decide if you're going to add that hole for the leash attachment and where you're going to add it. Now, it's super simple to add. Where I tend to add it is just where I'm going to place my ties for underneath the ribs, yeah, just behind the front legs. So yeah, actually, yeah, and that's maybe a measurement that you'll need to take. If you've got your cat's harness, you'll want to take the measurement from where it sits at the neck down to where the leash attachment is, and that's the length that you'll use as to where you place your little hole. Okay, so we're just doing the row as before, so chaining the one, continuing along. So the half double crochet in the first stitch, and then in the back loop only for the rest of the stitches until we get to where we want to place, that hole. Now all you're going to do is you're just going to create a chain that is large enough so your leash attachment can get through. So most leash attachments are a kind of a standard size, but you want to check that the hole that you make will accommodate your leash. Okay, and let me just give you an idea. So this one is 2.5 centimeters long. So I'm going to work my way along until I get to the point where and I'm just going to do it the same because this one's for Melba, it's all the same sizing. So I'm just going to do it in the same place that I did this last one. And again, just to give you an idea of what I'm working with, so to the to the start of the hole, let's measure from there, is about, just taking away that single crochet edge, it's about 12.5 centimeters. So I'm going to work down doing my half double crochets in the back loop, and I'm going to work down, and I'll come back to you when I'm about to start that little hole. So of course, if you never take your cat out on leash and you just don't want to do that leash attachment hole, then you just keep on going. Keep going until you've created your second half of your cape. Okay, so if you're not doing the hole, skip forward. I'll put on the video where to skip forward to. Otherwise, I'll see you in a moment and we'll work through that. We'll work that hole up together. Okay, so I'm going to start my hole here. Now, what you'll do on this edge of the hole, so the next stitch, work into both loops. And then chain the number that you need that corresponds to the size of the hole that you want. Now, I tend to chain 4, and that will depend on the size of your hook and the size of the yarn you're using, and then I skip 4. So you might, if you're using a finer weight yarn, you might skip 6 and chain 6. You'll just have to work that out for yourself because it will depend on your yarn, the size of your hook, and also the size of your leash attachment. Okay? So I'm chaining 4, skipping 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to work my half double crochet into both loops of that 5th stitch. So there I've created my little hole for my leash. And then I'm just going to finish the rest of this row with half double crochets in the back loop only up until that last stitch, where I'll place my half double crochet in both loops. And then I'm just going to keep working. I'll come back and we'll work together over this bit. It's really simple. It's, there's nothing fancy about it. You'll just work into your chain. And I'll be back soon. Okay, so I'm just at my leash hole here. So I'll work in that first stitch. I'll just work into the back loop as I've been doing. And you're essentially just working into the back loop or working into the chain as you move across. So, oops, there. So you're just working in between the V's of the chain, and it kind of works out to be the equivalent of the back loop only. And you move across, and then just keep on going. So super simple. I just wanted to come back for you quickly with that, just in case you're a absolute beginner. So you can see it's just worked over across the chain there. Okay, and then keep going. So keep going and do your second half of your cape, and I'll meet you once I'm at the end of my second half. Okay, so I've finished my rectangle, and perhaps I'll just give you an idea of these finished dimensions when I get my tape measure. Oh, here it is. Okay, so my finished dimensions are 30 centimeters across or long, and 22.5 wide. So that's just my dimensions for what I want for Melba. You'll have your different dimensions, but that just gives you an idea of the dimensions that I've got here. Okay, so you can kind of work out in the ballpark where you want to be. So this one falls, like I said, about 3/4 to down Melba's back. So now we're going to go ahead and create the border and the ties. So once you've finished, just chain 1, and we're going to turn, and then we're going to start to single crochet. So we're going to add a single crochet border, and then the ties are going to be added with that. And this is where you might want your stitch markers, and you might want to take a few measurements from your cat. Now I'm just going to once again do the same as what I've done previously, because I know this sizing. But what you'll need to work out is exactly where you need to place the chest ties, which are these top ones here, and where you want to place your behind the front leg ties. Okay, so and you might end up placing a third lot of ties if you want to. But because each cat is a different size, each proportions are slightly different, you will have to work out where you need these to be. So with these top ties, they are started at about 4 centimeters from the neckline. Okay, so the chest ties, you just want them to fall, obviously not too close to around the neck. You just want them to fall just across the chest. So it's not, this cape is not really, it's not meant to be tight on the cat. It's just meant to be sitting on your cat, so there's a warmer layer, and it doesn't have to fit perfectly. Okay, you want it to fit so it doesn't fall off, obviously, but there's no exact fit for it. So work out where you need that chest bit to be, and like I said, mine is about 4 centimeters down, and then you'll work out, because each cat, the chest and the length between the chest and behind the back legs will be slightly different, and for me that's about 9 centimeters. So I'm going to do the same, and you might want your stitch markers here. So you might you work out the length that you need and place your stitch marker where you want the chest ties to start, and where you want the under rib ties to start. So I can cheat a little bit there because I've made this before and I know where I want them to be, but you obviously just need to go through the process of working out where you want those to be. And for me, actually, I'm going to just move this one back one, because I want my under, where I've placed my leash hole, I want it to be my under rib ties to be approximately at that level. Okay. And again, this is why this one is so good. It's quite forgiving in the size, the size and the fit. It doesn't have to be perfect like it does for a sweater. And this is why, this is a great way to add a layer for your cat that doesn't require, being perfectly fitted. Okay, so you've chained 1 and turned, and now we're just going to place single crochets down to where you want your first tie to begin. Okay, so just a reminder, this is the chest ties. So 1 and 2. So I'm going to start at my next stitch here. So place your single crochet in that marked space, and then you're going to just create a chain. Okay, so make a chain for however long you want these chest ties to be. And again, the ties can be as long as or as short as you want them to be. You just obviously need enough that you can tie. So let me give you an idea again of how long I've made my chest tie. You know, and that'll depend on whether you want to just tie a little knot, whether you want to be able to tie a bow, how you want to do it. So these are about 25 centimeters long, these chest ties. So I'm going to do about the same for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and chain to about 25 centimeters, and you can count your chains. I think it was, from memory, it was about 50 chains for this size yarn and this size hook. So let's just measure it this time because I haven't counted, but you could count. You just need them to be symmetrical, you know. So let's just see where I'm at with that. So whether you count the chains or you just measure it, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, just a little bit further, another 5 centimeters or so. And what have I got there? A little bit hard to measure this on camera. Yeah, I've got about 25 centimeters there, so I'm going to run with that. Okay, so then you want to slip stitch. So starting in the second chain from the hook, you're just going to slip stitch down the length of the chain to create your tie. So just slip stitch, pulling through your yarn all the way down your chain, and I'll meet you once I get down to the bottom of my chain. So from here we're just going to slip stitch, we're going to single crochet back into that same stitch at the base of the tie, and then we're going to continue on with our single crochets until we get to our next tie starting point. Create a tie there. Now I'll meet you once I get back to this one. The second set of ties need to be longer, and you can decide if you want them just to tie underneath the ribs, or what I tend to do is I make them long enough so I can actually tie them up on the back here. So I tend to tie it just above the leash hole. So hopefully that makes sense. So it wraps underneath the ribs and then it comes back up onto the top, and I tie it here, just so the tie part is not underneath the ribs and not getting in the way of Melba's movement. Again, that can be your own design decision, but I like to be able to wrap them back around so I'm actually tying them on the top part of it, so on her back rather than under her belly. And then from there you can create, if you've made a really long cape, you could create a third set as well, just in front of the back legs. So that's entirely up to you. For Melba, I'm not going to do that, but you could certainly do that. If you've made a full-length cape, that might be a good idea, just to have an anchor point there. And once again, you decide whether you want them to tie up underneath the belly, probably less convenient, or if you want long enough ones that can tie up onto the back here. Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to finish my first tie here, and I'll meet you when I'm ready to do my, I'll meet you at the base of this tie, and we'll just work this little bit at the base here together, and then we'll move along to this next set of ties. Okay, so I've done my slip stitches all the way down that tie, which you can see there, and then I'm just going to single crochet back into that same stitch, just to anchor it at the base there, nice and securely. And then I'm going to, of course, just continue with my single crochets all the way down until I reach my next point of tie. And I'm just going to do this exact same thing. I'm going to make those ties long enough so I can tie them onto Melba's back, as I was saying before. And let me tell you how long I did these last time. And you can, like I said before, you can count chains, or you can just measure. These ones are about, and I'm measuring it off camera, sorry about that, they're about 45 centimeters long. So I'm going to do a similar length, and I'm just going to repeat the process that I did for this first tie. And then you go ahead and do the same, work out the length that you want, make the tie again using that slip stitch, make a third set of ties if you want to, and then we're going to continue around. So we're just going to continue with this single crochet border all the way around. And actually, just to mention, what you can do at this point is you can, so I've taken my stitch marker out of here obviously, and I'm going to just mark across on the other side where I want this to be. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches from the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to start there. So I just mark the other side where my tie is going to, be even on the same side. I'll repeat the same process with this stitch marker, and yeah, go ahead, make your second set of ties, a third set of ties if you want them, and I'll meet you down here, and we're just going to talk about moving along this short edge here. It's really simple. We'll just do the same single crochet along the edge there. A little bit more tricky because you're not working into stitches, you'll be working just into the top of each rows, or at least placing them evenly spaced along that edge. But I'll meet you once I get down here and I've created my second set of ties on second tie on this side. Okay, so I've created my second tie there, and I'm just coming down to this corner, so I'll place my last single crochet in there. Now I like to kind of round my corners, so I just tend to go straight across to the next stitch. If you wanted a squarer corner, you could just place 2 single crochets in that corner stitch, but like I said, I like them to be a bit more round, so I'm going to make a rounder one. Now you just move along on this edge. It's a little bit more tricky to see where you place your single crochets, but it'll be approximately 1 at the top of each row. Okay, so there's that top of that row there, the top of the next row. So just try and evenly space your single crochets along that edge. So yeah, do the best that you can there. So see, 1 at the top of that row, 1 at the top of this row, 1 at the top of that row, and I'm going to continue along. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to round my corner off, so I'm just going to keep going around the corner. You can see on this one here, see, it sort of just rounds the corner off, and as long as you don't do those corner stitches too tightly, you'll get this kind of rounded effect. So I'm going to do the same over here, and then I'm going to continue along, and actually I needed to place my other stitch marker in here, but this is where you can kind of just eyeball it across. You can you don't even need the stitch marker, but I'll get mine again and I'll place it in there, and I'm going to do my second tie there, and the second one of this set here, and then I'm going to finish off. Of course, I'm just going to keep going, single crochets all the way down to here. Okay, so this is where I started. So I'm going to meet you, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to meet you back at this starting point. Okay, so keep going, make your edge down this edge, go along, make your ties, and then I'll meet you once you've been all the way down this top edge. Okay, so I'm just at my tail end here. So this is my beginning tail, and I'm just going to work that in. So you've got the option to do that if you want to, or you can just weave it in at the end. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm not a massive fan of weaving in ends, so I like to work mine. So all that entails is you're just working over top of the tail. Makes it nice and secure, but also one less tail to weave in. So I'm nearly done on this final side, so I'll meet you shortly. Okay, I've worked in my tail, I've just got a little bit of excess there. I just snip that off. Okay, I'm just finishing off here. So this is my last single crochet, and I'm back around where I started. So now we're going to do that invisible stitch, invisible finishing stitch. So what we do here, your option is just to yarn over and pull through like we would normally finish off, you know, in a crochet project. But if you want to disguise the beginning and the end, just pull through your yarn and snip it off. So you don't yarn over, you just pull up your loop, or pull through to extend your loop, and then that gives you a working end. So I'm just going to thread my needle with that end. And how we're going to do this, we're basically just sewing a stitch. So what you're going to do is, so here's my last stitch, here's my first stitch, and we're basically just going to, all we're going to do is come under that first stitch like that, under both loops. So that gives me one side of my stitch. And then you're going to come down, so this is my last stitch here. I'm just going to come down through the center and into the back of that last stitch. So I've basically, like I said, I've just sewn a stitch. So you can't tell, so this is the one, my first stitch, this is my last stitch, and this is the one I've just sewn here. So just pull it to the tension that the other ones are around it. And then you'll just weave in the remainder of that tail into the back of your work. So all that is just, so just be careful you don't misshape it by pulling too tight. All you do is just weave under some of these loops at the back here. And then good idea to double back. Okay, so go back at least 2 or 3 times. So when you double back and you're weaving in, just never go underneath that same place. Obviously that's just going to unravel your work. So find a place where you can double back. That will be nice and secure. And then I'm going to go back one more time. And disguise this tail and make it nice and secure in the back there. Okay, and then snip off your excess and you're done. So look how beautiful this yarn, I just love it. I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but it's just this beautiful graduated color. And it's really soft, and I just love it. These colors are gorgeous. So there you go. So well done. Let's just show you. So these ties will tie up on the back here, underneath Melba's belly, and on the top. So I've left enough that I'll be able to do that for her. And then this one just ties at the chest. Like that. So you've got your cape, super simple, and I hope you've enjoyed this pattern. So please send along your photos to catventurous.community@gmail.com, or you can tag us on social media at catventurous.crochet. So thanks very much for being here as always, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, bye. Sleepy girl. Sleepy girl. How cool does that cape look? Doesn't it look great? Good girl. Good girl. Yeah.